6 o'clock news.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October 3rd meeting of the Finance Committee. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. We have a quorum present, so this is your current and existing Finance Committee, all four of us. But we'll talk through what we have. So on tonight's agenda, we want to, we'll talk through, we have 3 town residents who have applied for filed applications to join the Finance Committee, so we'll talk through that. We have Charlie Seelig, our town administrator, here with us. We have the draft warrant for the special town meeting that will be taking place on November 14th. That is hot off the presses, so Charlie will walk us through that. There's more on there than I was thinking, but that's okay. So we'll start with the applicants for the positions. So we have 3. Some of them, they came in late. 2 just came in today, I think, or recently within the past few days. It's great. So appreciative that we had people express interest. Wanted to talk with the committee about thoughts on, typically we've interviewed in the past, so we can set something up. I know we have ARPA next week, right, Dave?
I believe so.
Yeah. So we could try to set, I'll check with Rebecca on scheduling, because the meeting room situation here has been a little crazy, and we want to make sure we can do them on camera. But does everyone think we should move forward with interviews?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sure. Yeah, okay. All right, so if you just want to review their applications, we can come up with questions. I'll get something scheduled with Rebecca, and we will go from there. And hopefully within a couple weeks, then we can make a recommendation to the selectmen. I'm not sure when they meet again next, but get that.
Next week.
Is it this week?
Next week.
Next week. So we'll get that recommendation in after the interviews, and then we'll have a full committee, which would be great right before we move into special town meeting. Any questions? Okay.
Full is 7, right?
Full is 7, yeah, so that would be good, especially for department liaisons as we start to get into the process here. All right, so let's take a look at the warrant. Charlie, do you want to walk us through? Sorry.
This is obviously a very rough form. This is not the way it's going to town meeting, nor will all the articles that are on here necessarily make it into the final version. But we wanted to make sure at least you were notified, that we had placeholders so that during the next couple of weeks, as departments refine the requests, you'll know that something's coming down. They'll have a space. We won't call them to say, well, you're too late. This way, at least they got something in. The first article is one you'll see that most, especially in annual town meetings. This is to fund various contracts that have been approved since the previous town meeting. Back in May, we had not come to terms with any of the department heads that we had contracts that were expiring on June 30th, nor had we negotiated contracts, at least to completion, with any of the unions. We've got 5 unions and 2 department heads that we have contracts that were due on June 30th. The department heads, the fire chief and the council on aging director, who successfully negotiate contracts, will get amounts in for those 2. I expect at least 2 of the union contracts to be settled. We've reached the point where either we have a memorandum of understanding, or the next meeting will be, in fact, to confirm that. We have 3, one of which I haven't even heard from the union yet, so there's no way on earth that we're going to get a contract. But 2 others are in negotiations. We're either meeting with them this week or next week. We'll see if we've got something. If we don't, then we'll come to the special town meeting in May of 2023 to fund, or what I would hope, successful negotiations with those remaining contracts. We'll have details on the individual contracts and the total amounts needed for you for your next meeting, I hope.
Just quick question, who does the negotiations? Is that the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen has to approve. Usually who's attending the negotiations is myself and someone from our town council.
That's
Board,
it?
traditionally here in East Bridgewater, the board does not, none of the members attend. It's different in each community. I've seen communities where there's no town council there, other communities where a member of the board of selectmen, will divide the contracts up. So you handle fire, you handle police, you handle DPW, and they'll be there. There's never a quorum of the board there, because if there was a quorum and they said yes, that would constitute yes. This way, the negotiating team for the town, same thing for the union, the negotiating team for the town can come back to the board and say, this is what we negotiated, did you agree? And the union says the same thing to its membership.
So that's you and the town council or his representative?
Right, so they'll have, again, because we've got so many negotiations going on, they split town council, so John Clifford is handling the contract, Caitlin Moray, I believe, is hiring one, each of them, in fact, is handling one.
And you're doing them all for the?
Right, I'm there for all the negotiations.
That's a lot. Thank you.
If you remember, we did a classification compensation study with the Collins Center back at the beginning of the year. We've gotten to the point where I'm hoping during the next couple of weeks, the board of selectmen could approve a no wage grid based on the data that the Collins Center had come in with. That may be changes in number of steps for some of the positions that are not union. It may mean changes in just, even if without changing the number of steps, changing the wage grid or salary grid.
That's one of the applicants.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Just take notes for me.
In terms of, for the non-union positions, and again, I need to talk to the board before coming back to you, but I wanted a line item, I wanted an article in there, so in case the board wanted to move forward this fall. The library director was a separate negotiation because that's done through the library trustees, not through the board of selectmen. Under Mass General laws, the library salaries and such are done through the library rather than the town, even though the library, some places the library is still a separate institution, even though it gets most of its funding from the community. It's its own thing, not here in East Bridgewater, it's just another department, but it still follows the state statute. And they just successfully negotiated a new contract with a new library director. This was, Chris left, it was like June, something like that. We've gotten they've got a good candidate, and that would be a separate funding request to fund that contract. I've been talking with, I wish we had our numbers, but I know it gets a pain in the butt renumbering them all the time. But the fourth article on page 7, it's no news to any of you that if you have natural gas or electricity and you do not want a contract with a vendor for a supplier, you're gonna see your rates go up in the next few weeks. Same is true for the town, not for most of our contracts, but we need to make sure that we've covered our bases in the sense of if there are gonna be increases, that we have sufficient money in the budget to cover it for the remainder of the fiscal year. So we'll be working with John Haynes and Brian Keeley on that to make sure that we do have sufficient money. And it may be that we have no article, it may be that we pass over this article once we get into November, but again, it serves as a placeholder so that if we do need more money, rather than coming to you for a reserve fund transfer in May, let's say, that we get dealt with then. Fifth article there, change in budget for interest and short-term loans. We have that $11 million borrowing for the sanitary sewer project. We haven't borrowed the $11 million. We borrowed about, I think, $500,000 for that project, and also borrowed money for various projects on the larger scale. The Mitchell School paving project, the rehab for well number 1, and also the new generator for town hall and the police station. Were all sizable amounts, and the town meeting had voted to borrow that money. We took out a short-term loan in July, are going to be rolling that over in October, but not for the full amount. The 11 million, we don't need 11 million today.
Yeah, but isn't the rates going
Yeah,
on the
well,
move up?
it was a balancing act in that twofold. Well, there's several things going on. One is, you're right, we wanted to balance off whether, given the rates, whether it made more sense to borrow the full amount Okay. The problem is, once you borrow the full amount, you've got to pay back the interest. Here's the conundrum. We're still working out the development agreements with the major property owners that would be serviced by the sanitary sewer. We need money up front because the property taxes are gonna be paying for this bond don't exist until those buildings and such are built. So that, let's say we borrowed the money today. Well, first of all, in April of 2023, I'd have to pay the interest off that. Let's say it's the 11 million, let's say it's 6. Okay, I gotta pay $330,000 on April 1st. I don't have $330,000. So I don't wanna borrow the money without a funding source. The same is true even if we went 6 months. So until we know we have those development agreements, until we know we've got a funding stream to cover the first 2 or 3 years, we don't wanna borrow the full amount. We'll and not even start the project. We'll get to the point of going out to bid. We may even get out to bid. But until April of 2023, we don't need the money for the construction. And if we reach April of 2023 and we still don't have the development agreements, we'll be able to roll over again this much smaller amount. So yeah, there was a balancing act, but knowing we didn't have the money to pay the interest payment and then the principal payment and interest payment in, let's say, October of 2023, without those development agreements, we said, we can't do this. So that's why we're doing short-term bond anticipation notes. However, that does have an interest charge. It's much, much smaller than 6%, it might be 3%. But nevertheless, and it's for a short period of time, we need money, even on the smaller amount that we're borrowing, which is about $1 million, to pay that interest in April of 2023. So that's why you see this line item, in case we, again, talking with Pam Aducci, talking with Melanie Dean, and saying, how much more money do we need in that line item to make sure that we have sufficient money in April of 2023 to pay the interest on the band, a much smaller amount than, $1 million at 3 rather than $11 million at 6. I think we're gonna pass, we have the article for the bicentennial. We got $75,000 from the state as an earmark. It's unlikely we're going to need any funding from the town. I think we'll pass over this article, but it's there again as a placeholder so that if we get to November 14th and talking with Dale and with David and the bicentennial committee to say, do you need more money than the 75? One of the things the state is saying, you've got to spend the 75,000 by June 30th, even for the events after June 30th. And they're doing a whole year-long, the big events are in June, but they're doing a full year of events so that, okay, we can put a deposit down for part of the Brockton Symphony or Philharmonic, or whatever it is, to be doing a concert in September. Why they need a deposit up front? Great, we're happy to give it to you because we've got 75,000. The fireworks, yes, we can fund the fireworks, but that's only 20,000. And you say, only 20,000, we still got 75,000 total, we've got to be spending. So I don't think we're gonna need the article, but it's there just in case.
But have they given you like a plan that has, it's gonna
That's
cost
John's
75,000 on the dot or whatever it's gonna
David's
be?
working on that right now because I
Okay.
can't get the
Right.
75,000 from the state until I give the state a budget.
They have the plan, right?
Right.
Makes sense.
The Leland Farm feasibility study, Recreation Commission got, I think it's $28,000 from a different earmark. I believe they need funding, they're thinking more like about a total of 50, so they're gonna be looking for the difference between what they wanna spend on this, on the Leland Farm study, and what we got from the state, and they'll have to provide the details to you. The opioid settlement, we are getting money in from the various settlement fees. It only can be used for that, we can't go buy pencils with it. But we've got to actually appropriate the money and set it aside for opioid work, whether it's prevention, or whether it's remediation and treatment and things like that. So there'll be an article in town meeting to fund that. It will be, it will be the amount that we're getting in this fiscal year from the various settlements. And it's like 2, 3, 4 streams of money, because there are various settlements with various drug manufacturers and the pharmacies and wherever else was involved.
Right, how much is that again?
I don't know. In fact, we were talking with someone from Plymouth County Outreach, and she was mentioning numbers that didn't seem to resemble. It's in the tens of thousands of dollars each year.
Oh, that's all?
But it's a long-term process in the sense of, we will see that revenue stream for about 20 years or so. It's likely what we'll do is, because there's not enough money probably to be effective by ourselves, is work with a number of other communities. You know, you have to hire counselors and things like that. Well, it doesn't go very far on one community only. So, we'll be looking to team up with other communities in the area, Plymouth County probably, to hire contractors, whoever, to do this work. DPW director, this is the 1, 2, 3, fourth one down. So water department was looking for the utility truck with a snowplow. It got approved at town meeting in May, but it was based on a 5-year, I think it was about, based on a lease. Given the interest rate on the lease, and same thing with the doing long-term borrowing, it's about 6%. And since they have money in their fund balance for the water department, they can, instead of doing the lease at a 6%, they can buy it outright. And so they want to change that, basically take what we said we would do in May and simply say, we're gonna buy the same vehicle, but we're buying it outright rather than under a lease.
So they already got the vehicle, it's not new to them.
I don't know that they got the vehicle yet. I have to check with Jason and with John.
I guess I don't understand. So is it a new truck? Do you know?
Yes.
Yeah? How do they get a new truck for $45,000 with a plow on
Well, I could ask them.
it? Seems low.
EBCAM is now becoming a department. We started funding it, in fact, as one of the budget line items back in May. But we now want to create an enterprise fund so that the money coming in from Comcast goes into the enterprise fund, and then when we get to town meetings, instead of raise and appropriate, we'll take the money out of the enterprise fund, just as we do for the water system. But we need to create it as an enterprise fund. Similarly, with working with Ryan, he needs to integrate their computer systems with ours.
Just walked in.
Yep, so we'll have an article from Ryan. We do have one. What Rebecca was doing earlier today was just knocking out a warrant that at least told you, here are the things we're gonna be doing.
Yeah.
I know that Ryan will be providing you with he actually made, there's a real honest proposal. This isn't something on a piece of paper, beyond, he did a lot more work than that, in coming up with an article of this. Same thing with the library property for the security systems. Both of these articles will also be sent to the capital committee for review. That is something that had come up during the last few months at the library. The town clerk had, I believe it's the first two sections here, on page 9. She wanted to revise the licenses for dog kennels to be more realistic about what we term as a kennel. I mean, we've got people with a lot of dogs, and we've got people raising dogs for commercial purposes. And we still require a kennel for just people who have dogs. I think it's more than 3. So she wanted to set up a new licensing system for that, but it's also probably gonna require a change in the zoning law to allow, for instance, a residential zone, okay, you got 4 dogs, that's fine, you don't need anything special, versus if you're raising dogs for breeding purposes or running a kennel and sheltering and boarding operation, you do need a special permit.
Yeah.
I need to go back and look at 22F, because off the top of my head, I know we put an article in, but I don't know what that's for, and I'll find out. 23, the 4th and 5th articles in there are connected with the sanitary sewer system, in that doing betterments and assessments and such require us to accept those general laws regarding betterments and assessments. Stabilization fund for energy incentives, we are getting money back from some of the projects we're doing for energy efficiency, whether it's vehicles, whether it's the buildings, street lighting, whatever else. We want that money then to be used back again, or like a rotating fund, to fund new proposals for the same purposes. So we would take the money that we're getting for energy incentives, put it in the stabilization fund, and then at a future town meeting, take the money out of the stabilization fund for that purpose.
But those projects were originally funded with town money, period, right?
Well, except that sometimes we get money from National Grid, or what is it now, Eversource, I guess it is, or sometimes from the
Both.
state, depending on the project.
Yeah, National Grid's here, I think they're both here now.
Yeah, I mean, they give you a certain amount, they don't usually pay for the whole project.
Right.
So the town put a certain amount of money into it.
Yeah, it depends on the project. Like, so for instance, for the Green Communities projects, we're not putting our money up front. It's either gonna be state money or it's gonna be incentives from the utilities.
Right. So when those articles were presented before, we were saying we were getting X amount of refund. And I was under the impression that that would go back into the general fund.
For those projects, I would believe that would be true. It might be for future projects where we're not using the town funds,
For
where
the
we're getting
enterprise
energy
fund?
incentives.
Okay.
Last article, you see the explanation from the town accountant on the next page, on the top page 10. These were various authorizations to borrow, which either we no longer need in entirety, or we don't need the total amounts that were authorized. So just to clean up the books, if you authorize someone to borrow the 500,000, but you only end up borrowing 4, you want to clean up the books by eliminating that authorization for the difference, and that's what she's doing here. I want to check on the first article there on page 10. I think those are cleanup costs for the Precise Engineering property that are off of Union Street, which the town incurred. I need to make sure that that's what form, provide the billing to you and such. Fire chief, it's just one in a series of transfers that he was doing. I think originally we had gotten the money from the stabilization account, and normally we would have gotten it from the various fire department funds, so that the money's going back into the stabilization fund. So in essence, we borrow the money from ourselves, and we're moving the money back to where it came from. The other two that are on the fire chief right now, he needs to move money around. He's getting money from the feds to help pay for the new firefighters. He doesn't need that money now. We budgeted that money, but he's had two, I think it's maybe on the next page, yeah. In fact, if you see on the next page, there are 11. You'll see his explanation about why he needs the money transferred to the various different line items. I'm sure you'll meet with him before we have town meeting, if you have questions specifically about that. The
Destroyed by
article,
rodents.
sorry?
So we had to pay for some equipment that's destroyed by rodents.
Yeah, this was up at the water tower. The equipment shed there wasn't being regularly inspected, and our four-legged friends got in there and had a party.
Oh, well.
The overdue fines, I need to check with the planning board. I'm not exactly sure, because I didn't write that article. I need to find out more. I think self-explanatory isn't the right word, but page 12 it's an update of the wetlands bylaw from the Conservation Commission. What they did was two scenarios. One is the rewrite that you see on the following pages all the way through 26. If the first option, that whole 10 pages or so, isn't approved, they want to at least update the fee schedule for that, at the very least. So they would take the fees, so pages 27 and 28, there's the old fee schedule, there's the new fee schedule. I believe this was brought up at the annual town meeting, and they asked for a pass over because it wasn't ready to be approved at town meeting. And I think that covers it, those are all the articles. And I'll work with Rebecca and the department heads during the next few days to get more information out to you. You're planning on having a next meeting on?
We're not sure. I'm gonna check with Rebecca on room availability.
Okay. And then you have the holiday on Monday, the 10th. Selectmen meeting the 17th. But the two of us will endeavor to get all the necessary information to you in the next few days. At least this gives you a heads up as to what might show up in the final version of the warrant.
Okay.
Ryan is here. If there was any particular, you don't have the detailed proposal, so I'm not quite sure how worthwhile a conversation would be at this point.
I just came up to listen,
Oh,
so
okay.
obviously, FinCom affects my budget moving forward. But, I mean, I'd be happy to speak to anything, either the library security project or the EBCAM thing.
I mean, I don't think there's that many articles that we're gonna have a lot of questions on, so we can just do it on the next meeting. Yeah, that way we can look at your proposal and everything.
And we'll get that, Ryan, we'll get that, what you sent on both of those to them. Yes.
Any questions for Charlie?
No,
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, do you need me, I know it sounds weird, I'm gonna go back downstairs and kill some more emails. Not that I prefer doing that versus being here, but if I don't kill them, they breed, so.
No, it's fine.
I think I got one into you about that, the hazardous spot down there in Sage Mark, near Sage Mark.
Okay.
No, we actually have one of our applicants here, so we will,
Yeah.
we'll have some conversation
I'm
with
here-
her.
I'm here till 8, so if you need me to come back up, I'm happy to do so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Hi, how are you?
Are you Karen?
I am.
Okay, come on up.
I'm so
You can sit
sorry
at the
for-
table here with the microphone, please. I'm Dan Pika.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Karen Gill.
Joe Conley?
Hi.
Dave Walsh.
Hi.
Karen Harn.
Hi.
Thanks for coming out.
Sure.
And thank you for expressing interest in joining the Finance Committee. We did have your application. So what intrigued you about the committee?
Well, I ran for Board of Selectmen maybe,
3 years ago?
no, much longer than that. Let's see.
Time flies when you're having fun.
I know, right?
Remember that,
Maybe
yeah.
2016,
Could've
I'm
been, yeah.
thinking. And didn't win, lost to my esteemed competitor here. But at the time, I had sort of followed up with a letter. I'd be happy to join the Finance Committee. It's something that I've been involved with my whole life. And I didn't hear back, so I let it lie. I got caught up. My father got sick and then passed away. And so now I find myself with time and desire, and so I just saw the appeal on the emails coming from you all, and so I said, all right, fine, I'll see if they want me now.
Yeah.
So
No, that's
here I
great.
am.
No, thank you. Yeah, and I wasn't on the committee at the time. I don't know if they had openings at the time, but we appreciate that you're here now. So you said in your application, it says you run the financial side of a real estate office. What skills and kind of things that you've seen throughout your professional career do you feel like you could bring into the finance committee process?
Well, I'll admit right up front that I've never been involved in town finances. I ran a small business in Whitman for 10 years. I worked there for 20 years, but I was in various positions there. So I'm familiar with balance sheet, P&L, cash flows, all of, the typical finance stuff. In my current role, I get involved pretty much soup to nuts with taking care of all of the financial activity of our office. We have 135 agents and moving parts all the time. I have an escrow account if, average probably $2.5 million that I have to keep reconciled and paying commissions and explaining to people how their commissions work. And so I deal with money all the time. I understand budgeting. I understand the need to stay on budget. I wouldn't say that I exactly understand the article process and all of that kind of stuff that I just heard in your
Yeah.
previous conversation. But I don't think it's beyond me to learn it and hopefully learn it quickly.
Yeah, it takes a little getting used to, definitely. But
A little bit,
if we,
especially if you ran a business.
right, I know, right?
Do you find it in some ways counterintuitive? When you say especially if you've run a business, is it?
It's a little bit different. I mean, it's the additions and subtractions are all the same. Just you have to kind of understand some of the flow, where the sources are coming from, things like that, how some of the sources get replenished. Like I asked him the question earlier about the refunds coming back from National Grid.
Yeah.
I was just concerned in that particular case that when we presented those articles at town meeting, we said, oh, we're gonna get reimbursed for 80% of this, or we're gonna
Sure.
get reimbursed for 60% of it, which would go back into the town funds versus an enterprise fund.
Right.
So there's a big difference, and now, since it's gonna be projects that we're not putting money up front, it makes sense to put that into a stabilization fund. I just wanted to make sure that, as we told the voters in town, here's a project, the town's gonna fund it, but we're getting 80% back. I wanna make sure that we were getting that 80% back, and we weren't just starting a stabilization fund from scratch.
Yeah, I thought that was I made note of that comment because I was like, yeah, that makes sense that we'd want to make sure there's a refund before it gets put into a different bucket,
Yeah.
Some of that's supposed to come just from using less juice, no?
Well, no, some of it's rebates for the type of equipment and stuff that you buy.
Okay,
So
but,
just like at your home, if you put a heat pump in your house right now and you convert to propane and you go from natural gas or oil, there's a gigantic rebate because propane's a clean energy and
Right.
stuff like that. So all those types of things. So
So that brings up a question in my mind, if I can ask questions. I know
Yeah,
you
no,
guys are
please.
quizzing
no
me. but-
questions till you're on the committee.
Okay. Well, my question is, what kind of mechanisms are there when funds come out of a general fund, let's say, for a specific project that promises rebates or refunds at a later date? Are there, spreadsheets or how is that mapped to see the outflow and then the refund? I'm just curious, like,
Dave maps it.
Dave?
Well,
He
the
has a
town
map of-
accountant really
Right.
does a lot of
okay.
tracking of
Yeah.
this and stuff like that, and we tend to have some historic knowledge of this, so we're gonna ask questions when things come up at meetings, and we wanna make sure that things go back, because ultimately, the final decision for everything in this town is by the voters of this town at town
Course.
meeting, whether they realize it or not. So the board, we can make a suggestion, the selectmen can make a suggestion, but somebody can come into town meeting and change that article, or ask any questions, but it's that vote at town meeting. So it's very important, at least from my perspective, that what we tell people at the town meeting is what we're actually doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I think that that's our job here, and we're kind of like, we're kind of the gatekeepers for it. The capital committee is another gatekeeper, looking at things, seeing where the sources of funding are coming from, et cetera. Which the capital committee, since we're on the is also looking for some, for members also. So, but, so it's just important. So the role on the committee, to me, is one that we're here taking into we have to take it two sides, and I think, and my philosophy is whatever's the betterment of the community. So we have to look at what's good for the community, but we also have to look what, where's the town, what can we afford? So that's why it's good to ask the questions. People who are, I like to see boards comprised of the demographics of the town, that it's, there's a certain amount of this type of person, this type of person, all the different perspectives, because we're all taxpayers. And we just want to make sure that we're being very judicious with our funds, and that we're being fiscally responsible to the community. And a lot of times, the different perspectives and the different questions that we have as individuals, lead to many changes in the articles or changes with the departments. So, it's good to have the outside view. So it's just, you know, I enjoy it. It's fun. It's good to know what's going on, and
Yeah.
especially every time you get your tax bill in the mail and you gotta come to town hall and pay it, right? So, okay, I know that's good. We got a new ambulance, good, okay, never mind. Whatever. But because the town's on the track, is on a decent track right now, you know? People have done a lot of work over the years. There's been a lot of changes in town government over the years. And there's been a lot of changes, period, with COVID and how our lives have changed, et cetera.
Crazy changes.
So, I think it's good to be able to have a fresh look at things. I look at it as a fresh look because we're almost kind of starting over, in my book, you know? It's the unscripted waters here. So, it's good. It's good to ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because that's how you learn. So,
I've lived in this town for a long time, and as you say that, I'm like, shoot, I do have so much to learn. I feel embarrassed by how much I have to learn about how the town works, because I've worked outside of the town for a long time. I come home and I go to sleep and I go back to work in the morning. And I feel ashamed of it as I sit here before you, because I'm like, I could have been going to town meetings all this time. I could have been doing this, I could have been doing that, and I haven't done any of it, but I want to do it now. So,
Oh, that's great. I mean,
Three
yeah,
seats?
we are happy to have you want to be involved. So just so you kind of know from a expectations perspective, so we meet, we get pretty heavy with meetings in the first quarter of the year, leading up to town meeting, right, in May. Town meeting's now in May, not in April, so we have a little bit more time, but once the budget season starts, so the town administrator will have a department meeting late November, early December, and kind of set the expectations for, like, it's a 2% budget, 2.5%, 1.5%, whatever it is.
okay.
And the town department heads, they run around and they're busy, you know, getting that all together. We then assign liaisons to the department so that we work with the department head to make sure that
Sure.
we can understand and have questions ahead of time, try and understand their thought process. The bigger town departments like school, police, fire, DPW, we always just have two of us, so that way it's not overwhelming on one person. The smaller ones, some of them are pretty standard year to year, but you get a really great perspective going through that process. We'll have a few meetings now leading up to special town meeting in November, and then it'll be a little quiet probably until the end of the year.
Okay.
So I guess I'm on vacation,
Yeah,
pretty much.
yeah, we get summer vacation.
Okay.
Not a lot that
I
goes
don't get a
around.
lot of summer vacation, but that's okay. You guys go away and have fun. I'll hold down the fort. What else can I tell you?
Do you like to come to meetings?
To tell you the truth, it's been a long time since I had, when I ran my company myself, I had meetings. Not everybody loved my meetings, but, it's important to have a forum to get on the same page, to just what you said, to ask questions, to look over things together. If you don't have meetings, it's hard to have that happen. You can do a lot by email, but not that, I don't think. And I'm not a big fan of Zoom meetings. I don't think that they're that effective, or I should say, I don't think they're as effective as in-person meetings. I can look at you all, I can see, how you're taking what I'm saying. If I'm not making sense, I can stop babbling and take a second and then start from another perspective. But, yeah, I like meetings. I think that they're useful and necessary.
Yeah, I guess that's to Joe's point, that would be one thing. Hopefully we have 3 applicants, hopefully we'll get back up to 7, but, when we have only 4 of us, our quorum, according to town bylaws, is 4. So if one of us can't make it, we can't do business today.
Oh, gosh.
But if we have a couple more people, there's, people have things come up and we get that,
Oh,
but we
yeah.
just want to make sure people can commit to the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it Monday nights always?
We typically try to do Mondays. Once we get into that February, March
Yeah,
timeframe where
it's-
we're trying to squeeze a bunch of stuff in, we might have to do something
Understood.
a little different, but we do try to do Mondays.
Okay. my husband's out Mondays and Thursdays.
Okay.
And so it really dovetails nicely. Although having the house alone without him is sometimes nice too, but you don't have to tell him that I said that.
Well, we're on TV, so
Oh, oops.
that's okay.
Sorry, Brian.
No, that's okay. Yeah, all of our meetings are well, on EBCAM, they're all televised, so,
Hopefully you like being on TV.
yeah.
Yeah, I won't say that I do, but that's okay. It seems like a necessary evil.
Yeah. You
A
get used,
necessary benefit to the town, people in the town who are
I just
interested
don't
in
watch
seeing
the finance
proceeding.
committee meetings. Although one day, as a quick aside, one of my friends was at Fiesta, and for some reason they had one of their TVs on when we were doing our Zoom meetings.
Really?
She sends me a picture, I'm like, why is that on? And it was awful. But,
Yeah, that kind of town meeting.
yeah, I know. So, okay. Any other questions you might have for us?
Well, aside from when do I start, what do I need in order to prepare for being an active participant?
A real big notebook.
Yeah.
I have a little one, no, between now and the next meeting. Do you get the documentation that you need for the next meeting via email and
Yes.
that kind of?
So we'll send like agendas out and things like that, meeting notifications via email. Either typically or I might send it, or Rebecca from the selectman's office might send it. I mean, these are public. We can give you one of the draft town meeting warrants to take home and at least look through. That's what he talked about tonight.
Okay.
Again, it's really draft, so there's some missing and blank things in
Yeah.
there, but, and then we're looking, so our next steps, then we have to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, and then they appoint you
Okay,
to a term on the Finance Committee.
okay.
So I'm not sure, I thought maybe they met next Monday, but that's a holiday, so we'll have to go through and check
Well,
and
they
see.
would, the vacant positions, how they'll fill like for whatever the time period is.
Until the next.
Yeah, she gave me a, I had a post-it note here somewhere.
Jesus. I'm trying to stop something
having
from
some
popping
issues
up. Yeah.
I know I had a post-it note.
Shut it down.
Here it is. So there's 3 terms. There's one that ends June 30th of each year, 23, 24, 25.
Okay.
So, and I don't know how they've done that in the past. I don't know if we make that recommendation or,
No, they.
I don't think they just do that, yeah, so, so that's it.
Okay. Any last questions for me, besides, do I like meetings? I'm a good baker. Do you guys like to eat?
Sure.
Oh, I've been
not trying
promised
to-
snacks since
no
I joined
bribery.
this committee, and no one's ever brought snacks.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Joined, so I really can't tell you much.
Okay.
This is
You're the
maybe your-
person I want to talk to then.
Maybe your 4th meeting or 3rd meeting?
Third meeting,
Third
the
meeting,
others
yeah.
were part of the selectmen meeting, so they weren't really even
Yeah.
meetings, they were just voting.
Okay, well,
So-
if there are any other questions that I didn't hit and you want to email me, feel free.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Here, I'll give this to you before.
I got it.
Oh, you got it?
Come on.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming out.
Oh, yeah.
I like your tablet. What is that? Surface?
Thank you.
All right.
Easier to keep myself organized. on
Is
this.
that Surface?
It's an iPad.
So- Oh, iPad.
Yeah, it's just an app. So, okay, so we have that. All right. Any discussion? Do we want to?
We're gonna set up our next meeting, right?
So I'm gonna check with her
interviews?
on rooms. I'll either do it for the 17th or the 24th. And then I'll have her send the email out. But in the interim, I mean, we did have her come in. Do we want to make a recommendation?
I would make a recommendation.
Okay. So let's, I'll entertain a motion to recommend Karen
Make a
Gilman
motion.
be appointed. Motion by Dave,
Second.
second by Joe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll get that in the minutes. That way
Can keep it going.
we can keep it going. We at least get her on, and then we can interview the other 2 who just came in.
Nice. That'll get us to 7, hopefully.
Hopefully, that would be a nice
At least we have a
change.
tiebreaker, right? We
Yeah,
keep
that's true.
Hands up.
We have a contentious issue. Okay,
So one question, the agenda says approve any meeting minutes. Did we,
we don't have any meeting minutes
okay,
to approve.
okay.
Yeah.
But normally we would and we'd talk about it
Yeah,
at
so
that
next time
point.
we come in, we
Okay.
will. Yep.
I think we approved them all at the end, right? Or a lot of them we approved the
Well,
last
we did, yeah.
meeting, right?
Yeah, we won't do that this year.
Yeah, so we'll keep it going.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Dave, motion.
Second.
Joe, second. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.